Hey, everybody. Today I am thrilled to welcome Shelly Horton to the Big Dreams, Great Teams podcast. Shelly is a journalist, a TV presenter, and an outspoken advocate for women's health who brings candor, humour, and heart to everything that she does. She's been in the media for over 30 years, and you can currently see her on Channel 9. Plus, she runs her own media and speaker training company called Shell Shocked Media. This is where she teaches people how to shine on camera and build their confidence. And she holds Speak with Impact workshops and teaches big business how to tackle peri and menopause stigma in the workplace. So Shelly's also putting her final touches on a book, I'm Your Peri Godmother, which is going to help women navigate perimenopause with humour, honesty, and zero shame, which is available to pre-order now and it officially launches at the end of July. But the reason I've invited Shelly onto the podcast is to have an honest conversation about perimenopause, how it affects our brains in business. And we're also going to be touching on strategies for speaking with confidence and maintaining that while you aren't exactly feeling your best, hormonally or otherwise. So a very big warm welcome to you, Shelly. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my favorite subject, so I cannot wait to dive in.
Yay! Well, you're obviously incredible, and there are so many things I want to talk about today. But let's start with where you've said that you're too busy for brain fog. So that's in your bio. You're obviously incredibly open about your perimenopause journey. So let's start there. Can you share a little bit about your personal experience? Tell us all the things.
So this perimenopause hit me in 2020. You might remember there's a little thing going on then, pandemic. Whoever decided perimenopause and pandemic should go together needs to go to hell because it was the perfect storm. Here's the thing. I was 45 and I was in perimenopause, but I'd never heard the word perimenopause before. I knew what menopause was. I figured that was just grey-haired old ladies and their periods stopped and they clutched their pearls and had a few hot flushes. That was it. Yeah, I was very wrong. Very, very wrong. So 2020 and my symptoms started with heart palpitations. Now, I'd never had anxiety or anything like that before, so having these heart palpitations was really unusual, but it was COVID, so I kind of just said, well, I'm just stressed. Everyone's stressed. Then I sort of felt hotter. So it wasn't like those movie hot flushes. It was more just that I felt like 3 degrees hotter. But also, it was COVID and I had been comfort eating. And so I'd put on a few COVID kilos. So it was easy to just disregard that. Then I started getting a little bit of depression, which I now know is perimenopausal depression, which affects 1 in 3 women. It is a huge thing we need to talk about. Again, I have never had mental health issues before, but I figured it's a pandemic. It's just stress. So I put up with these symptoms for months and months and months and months, and I didn't even think that I should see a doctor. I figured I just wasn't coping. And then, now I have to be very transparent here, and I hope the blokes listening strap yourself in, but this is important for you guys to know as well. I had an IUD called a Mirena. Now, a Mirena is a form of contraception, and my best thing about it was it stopped my periods, and it meant I'd had it replaced a few times, and I hadn't had a period in 12 years. I wanted to marry it. It was the best. But September 2020, I had what could only be described as an Armageddon period where I bled through my clothes. Like, it was horrific. Now, it was only because of that I thought, ooh, I better see a doctor, which I really want to advise everyone is don't wait till it gets to that stage. Now, unfortunately, I'm a little bit of a tight ass and I don't have a regular GP. I just go to like bulk billing clinics. This is when I lived in Sydney. So, and also it was a pandemic and it was a big deal to go and see a GP. So I did ask for a female GP. I figured that was, I was at least head start with that. What I didn't know is most GPs have had exactly 0 training when it comes to perimenopause. Now, that's not actually their fault. That is a problem with the system and shocked me because how can they have no training in this area when it affects 100% of women who live long enough, 50% of the population? So my GP had no training. So when I went in with my symptoms and she said, oh, unusual bleeding, that could be cancer. So she sent me for an internal ultrasound into a hospital, full pandemic, masks, the whole thing. It was very stressful. And then she said, oh, we'll do some blood tests. I now know blood tests are completely useless for diagnosing perimenopause because your hormones change every single day. However, she managed to tip my stress levels to the absolute, into the red. I came back a couple of days later to get the results, and she said, "Great news. It's not cancer. You don't have uterine cancer. How amazing. And your bloods are fine. So you're just not handling your stress. So maybe you should take up a hobby." What the? Oh my, like, I have never felt so mad. I wanted to fly across the doctor's surgery and strangle her. However, I did what most women did. I just meekly nodded and went home, cried my eyes out, and blamed myself for not coping with stress. So because my first point of contact about perimenopause was so ineffective, it meant that I didn't actually see another GP for nearly 9 months. So I had nearly a year of what I call raw dogging perimenopause, where I had no help whatsoever. And unfortunately, that meant that my symptoms got worse and worse and worse. And the one in particular was my perimenopausal depression. So it got to the point where I didn't want to go to work. Now, for people who don't know me, I am not proud of this, but I'm a bit of a workaholic. I'm working on getting better at that. However, when a workaholic doesn't want to work, then you know something's really wrong. And I would find that I could rally to, perform on Channel 9, but I would be so exhausted by it. And I would drive home in floods of tears with the most horrible negative self-talk of like, you just embarrass yourself in front of the nation, and your mum and dad must be really ashamed of you. You're so stupid. And probably you should quit your job because it would be humiliating to get fired by Channel 9. So that's what my brain was telling me. So when I went home one time when it had been particularly loud, in tears again. I had a lot of tearfulness with my perimenopausal depression. And I told my husband, Darren, and he sat me down. And I think it's the kindest he's ever been, anyone has ever been to me. He sat me down and he just said, "Look, I don't think there's anything wrong with you, but there might be something wrong with the chemicals in your brain. So why don't we go and see a GP together?"
Oh, Darren.
I know, right?
Yeah.
The kindest. So it made it not my fault, which I was really, really caught in that shame spiral and blaming myself. So then I basically got to a GP who was educated about perimenopause. She's like, "Sweetheart, we'll just whack you on some HRT. And also you probably need an antidepressant." And I do believe I needed it at that stage, even though that is not what is all the studies show for treating perimenopause these days. You treat it with hormones because it's a hormonal imbalance. But then I got better. And you know what? Instead of just feeling grateful that I got better, I got mad. And I got really mad. And so, me being me, I'm not exactly quiet. So, I ended up campaigning in Parliament. I ended up talking about it on TV. And now I've written a book. So, that's what I do when I get presented with a problem. Big solutions, everyone. Big solutions.
Love. Well, I think you've just answered about 3 of my questions in one there. That's so good. So is that why you wrote the book? Is it raising awareness? Is it like, because, through that story, you've just made me feel completely normal, given me some guidance on where I should go. Like, is that why you wrote it?
I wrote it because I felt like I had slipped through the cracks. My mum didn't talk to me about it. My friendship group is varied, and so I didn't have that many friends my age because I moved away from my hometown for work. So therefore, I didn't have like that school friends that keeps you at the same age group. And I just felt like if I slipped through the cracks, who else was slipping through the cracks? And so that's why I decided to write the book. And then when I started really educating myself about it, I realized how little I knew. So, for example, the average age for menopause in Australia is 51, but perimenopause can last between 4 and 10 years. Did you hear that? A decade, people, a decade. And that's what I call hormonal hell, because that's when your ovaries are basically spluttering to a halt. And what we need to do is, make some choices about whether or not you're going to go into HRT or you're going to manage your symptoms with the lifestyle changes. But you need to do something because this is a really rough patch for a lot of women.
I think it's so validating to hear people speak about it. Like, I know for me, about 18 months ago, I started to experience heaps of the stuff you're talking about, like anxiety for the first time, sleeplessness. I'm one of those people who literally used to sleep under my desk when I was an investment banker. I'd have a 20-minute power nap, so I've never not slept. And then I was sort of experiencing all these things. And I actually went to an acupuncturist who used to be a teacher at my yoga studio. So this guy has seen me through, a miscarriage, 2 pregnancies, COVID, all sorts of things. And it was super interesting because I thought maybe he can put some needles in and help me with my stress in inverted commas. And it was super interesting because he introduced me to this term perimenopause, which I had never heard of, suggested that I read an amazing book, and then said to me, like, I've never seen you like this. And it was actually really nice for somebody who used to see the calm yogi Paula and the Paula who's been stressed before, and then just comparatively go, no, this is not normal and it's not stress. It's a whole bunch of other things, and gave me some suggestions as to how to investigate it and what GP I could talk to that would understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually some great studies on acupuncture and how it helps with perimenopause and menopause, mainly for hot flushes. But also, we know that there's so much evidence for acupuncture when it comes to hormones and the reproductive area. So I think you're very lucky that you had someone like that to lean on.
Absolutely. And I mean, I must admit, I didn't even go and see him very often. He just kind of put me in this direction, but it was just so validating that it was like, yeah, somebody who knew me pretty well could just go, no, this isn't you. This is something else. Go and check this thing out. So thank you for writing a book about it. Can't wait to read it. I've pre-ordered mine, everybody, and I'll definitely be putting the link in the show notes. But let's talk specifically about brain fog, which I think I certainly find very challenging. So I'm sure lots of people listening of our age would also find challenging. How's it affected you? What is it? How do we help ourselves? What do we do?
So, brain fog is one of the big 3 when it comes to affecting you at workplace. So, there's hot flushes, perimenopausal depression and anxiety, and brain fog. Now, brain fog affects 80% of perimenopausal women. So it's a big one. And the big news and the great news is it's not dementia, it's not Alzheimer's, but a lot of women actually go to the doctor saying, I think I've got dementia. So what you need to know about brain fog is, particularly in your own business or at work, it affects your executive function. So that's trying to find words. And it can be stupid things like, oh, what's this thing that I put powder on my face with? Oh, it's a brush. It's a makeup brush. You just forget words. Now, the impact of that is you lose your confidence because you don't trust yourself anymore, because you used to be able to rock up to meetings and wing it and multitask. Brain fog actually makes you purposely slow down, which is something that I don't actually think is a bad thing, because I think that as women, we tend to have too many, plates that we're spinning anyway. But what I do want to remind women is this is temporary. So they've done the brain studies. There is no permanent change to the brain because of brain fog. What it is you just need to take care of yourself a bit more and do a bit of pre-planning. So what I would suggest to people listening is, if brain fog is particularly bad for you, start using memory aids. So for me, I love a list. Oh, I love a list. So make sure you have your list there, so you're not trying to keep things in your head. Use old school, go post-it notes, use whatever you need to keep you on track. But then I had it's kind of funny, but not really funny. I had one situation where brain fog kicked me in the ass, in that I was based in Sydney and I was flying up to Brisbane to host the Dog Lovers Festival, because, I'm quite a big deal around here, hosting a Dog Lovers Festival. Oh dear, how's my life? But what happened was I was really busy. I'd worked all day. I jumped on a plane. And I knew that the year before, when I'd hosted that show, I was staying at a certain hotel. I think it was the Hyatt. And so I just got in the Uber and just went, take me to the Hyatt in Fortescue Valley or whatever. Got there and they're like, I'm sorry, Miss Horton, but we don't have your booking. And so I was outraged. And, the Meno rage kicked in then. And I'm like, of course I do. Rah, rah, just get me a room. And I was an absolute asshole. So they got me a room, and then I went up to my room, had some dinner, went to bed, got up very early to, get to the event the next day, and found out that I was right hotel, wrong suburb. I was supposed to be at the Hyatt in South Bank. Yeah. So not only was I then running late for the event because I had to get an Uber, I then had to grovel and apologize to the front desk staff that I had been rude to. I then had to grovel to the staff at the next hotel so they didn't charge me for a no-show for the night before and get up on stage and perform for 8 hours. So not ideal, not my finest moment, but it did make me realize that I was just cramming too much into my head. And so now I have more details in my calendar. So if I have to go to a hotel, I have the suburb there as well. I have the actual address. I have all of that just to help me so that I'm not having to take my foot out of my mouth.
So is that the biggest change you've made? Like help yourself a little bit more details, memory aids, and just trying to not pack your calendar quite as full?
Yeah, absolutely. And I honestly use that because taking HRT does help as well. I am not a zealot for HRT. I'm a zealot for choice. I just want to make sure that women understand that it does not cause breast cancer. It is the safest option for most women. And it's very, very personal. So it's up to you whether or not you take it, but it does help in many other parts of your life, including your brain, your heart, and your bones. So that little, soapbox aside, please make your own informed choice. But for me, the other thing that I found to cope with brain fog is I needed more downtime because I was packing my schedule so full and I loved it. Like, as I said, bit of a workaholic. So keeping myself, absolutely at top speed, 7 days a week, running my own business, I kind of got off on that. And then when perimenopause hit, I couldn't. And I found that if I had to perform on stage for 8 hours, emceeing an event, the next day I needed downtime. So I came up with a bit of a catch cry called a 0 day. And I am trying to do a 0 day once a week is ideal. Most times it's once a fortnight. Sometimes it's just like whenever you can. But I need a day of zero work. And I really recommend that to everyone. And I am a small business owner, so I know how hard it is to say that. But having a day of absolutely no emails, absolutely no work calls, no prep, make sure that you are actually just chilling out, going for a walk, eating some good food, spending some time catching up on some trashy TV. It helps your brain recharge so that the next day when you're back in work mode, you're back at 100%.
And for everybody listening, Shelley's 0 day also includes like no life admin. So it's no grocery shopping, it's no like paying the insurance, it's actually like nothing.
Yeah, I also suggest don't catch up with friends. And I know that's a bit controversial as well because I'm an extrovert and I love catching up with friends. But I actually think, particularly when you're in peri, you need time just to recharge. And so, therefore, it is a 0 day, zero. Try and protect those days as much as you can.
Love that. So you've talked about your 0 day. You also talked about energy management and then just not shoving as much into your calendar and then memory aids. Awesome. So let's jump now to talk about some of the work that you're doing with bigger businesses. So I know that you're going into corporates and you're sort of advocating and having conversations in there about both peri and menopause. What are you talking about? Like, what can we learn from what the big boys are doing?
So the thing is, we need to sort of go overseas to get the research because we just haven't got the studies in Australia. But there's a great study from the UK that shows that 1 in 10 women will quit their jobs because of perimenopausal symptoms. 1 in 10. Now, that really does affect a business's bottom line. If you've got to replace staff, this is actually a massive thing. You also lose that incredible brains trust of women who have been in your business and have built it up with you. The other thing is these women are not retiring. Like, I'm sorry, but not many of us can afford to retire at 51 or in your 40s. What they're doing is they're taking a job that's less stressful. So a great example was we had a woman who was working in a bank, but she felt like her brain fog and her hot flushes were just too overwhelming. And she was worried she wouldn't be able to reconcile at the end of the day. Her young male HR manager was just like, take some time off, take some time off. So she used all of her leave, all of her personal leave. And here's the thing, leave doesn't help when this is something that happens 365 days a year for maybe up to 10 years. So it's actually about getting treatment. She ended up quitting the job at the bank and got a job as a receptionist at a dentist 3 mornings a week. Now, if that was her dream, all power to her. but it wasn't her dream. It was just all that she thought she could manage. And that then, feeds into the pay gap. That feeds into lack of super. So this is where I'm really passionate that big business needs to lead the way and show how it's done. Because my issue is we just need education, because let's not just put up with these symptoms. Let's get treatments. There are great treatments for all of the symptoms. And then you don't need to leave your job because you feel like you're coping. The other thing is just removing the stigma. So I think it's important that we don't feel like this is embarrassing secret women's business, because really secret women's business just holds women back. We need to actually use the words, use the terms, and not feel embarrassed about it. And I think that is something that younger generations coming up, they are going to rock perimenopause, because they talk about periods. They don't shove their tampon up their sleeve when they go to the toilet. They are amazing. So I think that they will be ahead of us. But as a Gen X woman, I am happy to be loud and proud right now to help others.
And I'm so pleased that we're having this conversation so I can contribute a tiny amount to that, because I think that's so much it, isn't it? Like, we've got enough shame and guilt and stuff that we're already carrying as, mothers, as women, as all the things. So if we can just park this one and be like, let's just talk about it. It's a thing. We can't control it. And that's not a bad thing, but it is a thing. Love. Okay, so you're just raising awareness and getting these bigger businesses to start to talk about it and work out, well, how do we support people through this process so that they don't have to quietly opt out and resign? Love. Okay. So do you have any ideas then for small business owners as to what they can do? Because, you're a small business owner yourself. It's not like we've got fat margins. It's not like you've got heaps of time on your hands. What can we be doing to create as a supportive environment as possible, but without like taking the load on ourselves?
Yes, absolutely. So again, it's about education. So, I go into small businesses, or I do Zooms with small businesses, and it's only a couple of grand. So it's not a massive investment. The big companies are doing get a webinar, do a policy, have extra training. So you've got extra staff with extra, almost like, how you have a mental health first aid officer, they now have menopause mentors, they call it. But for small business, keep it small. Like, let's do a lunch and learn, or, plug my book, but educate yourself, and then maybe give everyone a copy of the book and say, let's all get together Friday in a month's time and just have a chat about it and see how we can support each other. Because within a small business, that support may even be as simple as recommending a GP that you've got who's educated, who can help you. It might be talking about being a bit more flexible if someone's really suffering with insomnia, how they can get some help in that situation. It might be just making sure that you're not having someone pushing, Amway, herbal supplements, that sort of stuff, which, I'm not a fan of, but in fact going, look, here's what the evidence shows us. Let's have a look at how these symptoms can be treated. And then you almost have a bit of a sisterhood is created, that you can help each other and share your stories.
I love that. So it's almost like you don't need to take on the responsibility, but it's like just through providing education and a conversation and even guiding somebody where they can go, puts them on a path to ultimately not leaving your business and maybe being a bit more open about how they're feeling. Love. Okay. So let's jump to your Speak with Impact workshops, where you teach people to find their inner Taylor Swift at work.
Inner Tay-Tay.
So, perimenopause or not, as business owners, which most people listening to this podcast are, we need to be confident when we're speaking about our business or when we're presenting. Can you share a little bit about your techniques? What are the secrets? How do we do that?
So I love teaching this because it's one of those things that I think it should be taught in school. I have some incredible tips and tricks that once you've heard them and once you start doing them, you're like, oh my God, why haven't I been doing this my whole career? But what my workshops teach is, first of all, it's about how to calm your nerves, because that's the thing that everyone stumbles over, is if you get nervous, your throat gets tight, your voice goes a bit higher, you're not sounding as authoritative, or you're not breathing enough, all of that doesn't let you come across as the authority and the expert that you want to be. So calming yourself down and learning some techniques to really warm up and get organized before you actually speak, particularly to an important client. And then I encourage everyone, perimenopause or not, to jot down a couple of dot points of what you want to get across, because by organizing your thoughts, you're going to be clearer in the way you're communicating. And a lot of people write out a script. Here's what I want to say. And then they try and memorize it. And then you end up sounding like a robot. So I want to make sure that people just do dot points, because that then gives them permission to tell their story. And however it comes out is great, but you're not stuck to a script that you might feel like you failed if you end up veering off course a little bit. And I think this is also sometimes when you're in your business, it's hard to describe what you do because you're just doing it. When you come to one of my workshops, I make you describe it very succinctly so that you then present that to everyone, whether it's, a potential client, a current client, or maybe it's even just talking about it with your staff. You just sound like you're more on top of your game. I had this great example where a PR company kept sending me their entrepreneurs to come and do my course. And it was amazing. I love working with entrepreneurs. However, about 5 years in, the head of this PR company said, actually, I'd kind of like to do the course too, even though I'm not going to be front facing. I'm not going to be doing any media, but I'd like to learn. Now, she came along, and when I was asking her to explain what she actually does with her business, she ended up bursting into tears. And because she put so much pressure on herself that it wasn't perfect. So we broke that down, worked out what it was, and then came up with some really good messaging on how to describe her business. Now, 2 weeks after that, she rang me and she just went, I just landed 3 new clients because now I know how to describe my business on the phone. And why the hell did I not do this 5 years ago? So I think it's a great skill that people think they know because they've run their business for, maybe 7 years. But in fact, you could always do it with a bit of polish.
Love. Okay. Calm your nerves, make some dot points, be ready to tell your story, and learn to describe yourself succinctly. So good. So, are these the common mistakes that most people make, or there are some more that you can throw in there? Like, what do most people do? Like, what about the whole fake it until you make it business? Like,
I still believe in all of that. I believe in all of that. But I think that we need to get away from that expectation that we can just wing it, because winging it is actually just half-assed. If I'm going to be asked, I want to be full-assed, okay? So I want to make sure that you're really putting your best foot forward. So another thing I teach is called the 5 Ps. It's prior preparation prevents piss poor performance. So actually make some effort. If you're going to maybe present at a conference, don't have it that the first time you go through your slides is when you're on stage. Make sure that you put the preparation in and you record yourself going through your presentation. You can then watch it back and go, oh my God, I was so boring in that bit. And you can pick that up or throw in another anecdote. I think that there are so many of us that just have this huge expectation that we should be good at that, when in fact we haven't been taught the skills.
you've just given me permission right in that moment. So thank you for that. I've been a speaker for 15 years. And one of my things is that I practice my presentations 3 times before I go on stage or Zoom. 3 is my thing. And somebody, it could be my husband, who I love dearly, but he's more of a wing it man. Somebody said to me that I was a control freak and completely overbaking it. Whereas actually I want to hear where I ramble. I want to hear where I stumble. I want to make sure I'm telling the story well, and I'm tweaking it, because often my first version, which I thought was good, looks a little bit different to the third time round. And I will stand up, often put the heels on and do it. So permission. I feel like I've just received permission.
I love that. No, and I'm so proud of you, because I have to sometimes, fight with people who are just like, oh, I don't have time for that. I'm like, you are actually not going to be getting the conversions that you want if you're not at your best. When you get an opportunity to speak on stage, you want to make it land. So for me, putting in that prior prep is in fact an investment in yourself. So I will double down on that. It's like saying Venus Williams doesn't need an extra tennis lesson. It doesn't make sense. You just want to get better at what you do. You need to do that over and over.
I love that. And it's not about being so confident that you need to wing it or anything. It's prepare.
And also give the people who are sitting in the audience, give them the time that they want. They want to learn from you. They want to hear your stories. I think that a lot of people forget how important anecdotes are. And sometimes you can't think of an anecdote on the spot, even though you've been in your business for multiple years. if you've done the prep beforehand, you can go, oh, hey, it'd be good to use that anecdote there. That really illustrates that point. And that will then make them remember your presentation and want you to come back, or they'll want to work with you.
Love. Oh, okay, fantastic. Now, is there a particular strategy or suggestion that you have for those difficult days? So, whether it's perimenopause, whether it's like I've just, the family pet's died, or I've had a fight with my hubby or whatever, and I need to go and be my best version of myself. And that could be like pitching to a new client on a Zoom call, or it could be standing on a stage. Do you have any tips for us there?
Yeah. So look, those days happen and you need to actually still be able to perform. You can't be in a puddle. So for me, it's about being present, because often when you're really stressed, you're either thinking about the past or thinking about the future. So it's about getting yourself right into the present. I also got a great tip, which is about negative self-talk, because when you're not feeling great, that's when the negative self-talk gets louder and louder. And it's like, you're going to stuff this up. You're really tired. And oh my God, we just had to bury the dog. So therefore you're never going to nail this. But that negative self-talk can be turned down. And the tip that I got was actually from Cirque du Soleil. So imagine for them, if they have negative self-talk and have a bad day at work, they could die. They could fall to their death. So they have a troop meeting, and what they've done, and there's a lot of science behind this, but what they've done is they have named their negative self-talk. So instead of it just being you talking about you, by putting it as an outside character, it makes it easier to turn it down. So they have decided that they call their negative self-talk Kevin. So what they do when they have their troop meeting before a performance is like, has anyone got Kevin a bit loud right now? And someone will say, oh yeah, Kevin is really loud. And so as a group, they in unison go, fuck off, Kevin, and scream it, which I love. One, because I love swearing, but two, it's like the team is going, we are going to blast that negative self-talk out of the room. And you know what? We're never going to get rid of it, but we're just going to say, we don't have time for you right now. So fuck off, Kevin. I'll deal with you later. I really need to focus and perform well. And you can do that yourself. I can't use Kevin because my dad's name's Kev. So I have Frank. So I just have fuck off Frank. And I just, I have that complete picture turns out. And I'm just like, fuck off Frank. I've got to get through this. And then if you need to talk to me afterwards, we'll have a chat.
Love it. I reckon Kevin's related to Karen. They might be friends with Frank.
It could be very close. Yes, it could be very close. You get to choose the name of your negative self-talk. I've got friends who, have named them as their ex or mother-in-law or whatever it is. But if you want to be able to have permission to tell that person to F off, you can use whatever name you like.
I love it. I love it. What about the power pose? Because isn't there some technique where you open your chest and your hands in your hips and you take up space?
Yeah. So Amy Cuddy did a TED talk, and if you haven't seen it, it's worth watching. She actually studied the brain. And when you are standing, I would describe it as like Superwoman, or Wonder Woman. So your feet are wide, your hands are in fists on your hip, and you've got your absolute best posture. If you stand in that posture for 2 minutes, they have studied the brain and shows that it increases the part of your brain that supports confidence. So just getting into that power pose can help your performance. And it doesn't have to be being up on stage. It might be asking for a pay rise, or it might be going for a new job, whatever it is where you want to feel at your best. Let's tap into the physical things we can do that will help our brains.
Love. Okay. So much goodness there. And I don't think I'm ever going to forget Frank or Kevin. Love it. Oh, goodness. So much juicy stuff today. For anyone listening, thinking that they've got perimenopause symptoms, what advice do you have for them? Where should they go? What should they get started with?
So first thing is educate, educate, educate. It's up to us to advocate for ourselves. You are the CEO of your own health. So therefore, take care of business. You don't need to put up with these symptoms. There are treatments available. Find out what is going to be best for you. If you're having trouble finding a GP who is really informed in this area, I suggest you go to menopause.org.au, which is the Australasian Menopause Society in Australia and New Zealand. And they actually have a little drop down called Find a Doctor. And you put in your postcode and it will list the doctors in that postcode that have got extra training in that area, or at least empathy and understanding of that area. They're not going to say, sorry, HRT causes breast cancer, I'm not prescribing it to you, because that's bullshit. So go there to find a good doctor. Then also share that information with your friends. So don't keep the education to yourself. This is why I've done the book. Like, get that information out there as much as possible. And that also helps reduce the shame and stigma. Just normalize the conversation. Make sure that you're saying the word perimenopause, not like women's troubles. Like, I basically think of perimenopause and menopause in the workplace the same as mental health in the workplace was 10 years ago. Remember when no one would say depression or anxiety? There was so much stigma around it. Well, that's going to be us in a couple of years, where we're like, oh my God, I can't believe we're embarrassed to talk about perimenopause. Like, how backwards is that?
And even just having that as a goal in our mind, let's talk about it so much and let's normalize it so that we can look back. Okay, we've obviously got your book, I'm Your Peri Godmother, which, as I said, launches on the 29th of July. I've ordered my pre-order. You all should too. I'll obviously put the link in the show notes. And then for people who are interested in your workshops or having you either teach their team or teach them about speaking with impact, what's the best way to reach out to you about that?
So I am very active on social media, so you can just slide into my DMs. I'm Shelly Horton and the number 1, so Shelly Horton 1. Jump onto my social media, or if you want to, I do have a contact form on my website, which is shellshockedmedia.com. So I would love to hear from you.
Amazing. Well, thank you for all your wisdom and conversation today, and humor and all the things. I can't wait to read your book. Congratulations for writing it.
Thank you for having me. And seriously, let's just do another whole episode, because I've got more to say. Okay. It's like, you can't shut me up. There's a lot to get through.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll take a poll. We'll have you back. It'll happen. Thank you, Shelly.
Thank you for having me.